Prynawn da, croeso i cyfarfod, diolch am bob, am dod. Hello and welcome to Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council's Thriving Scrutiny on Tuesday the 10th of March. Please note that this meeting may be recorded and broadcast via the authority's internet site. Any person in view of camera is, by virtue of attending, consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings being used as outlined. The images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. We've had apologies for Howard Jackson. I think that's it. Yeah. Item agenda 2, declarations of interest. None. Okay, thank you. Item agenda 3, minutes of previous meeting.
Okay, on page 6 of the minutes, at number 43, waste and recycling progress. The first dot there says no guarantee, it's in response to question, no guarantee, but expectation that fines would not be enforced due to ongoing engagement with RAP. That's because we didn't achieve the 70%. Am I right?
Yeah.
If that is the case, I would add there after the word RAP. So fines would not be enforced due to an ongoing engagement with RAP as a result of not achieving the 70% recycling targets.
Okay. Happy with that. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Chair,
Yeah.
on the same question, can we ask officers what's happening? Where are we?
Yeah. Well, we're on the list, but yeah.
It's all right saying that, but perhaps they might answer back, or they haven't had the answer back.
Yeah, when we ask,
But can you put it in and say, you know?
Yeah, no problem. We get an update on that for you. Dave was in on
it. No, I didn't have any yet. No, it's just that one.
All right, okay. All right, thank you. Anything else on the minutes? Everybody happy with them? Okay, great. Agenda item 4, action logs. There's some actions still outstanding, but Neil's going to chase these up and get clarification and get them back to us ASAP. Okay, everything else? Oh. Item agenda 5, impact of the Halo's leisure on the council's leisure services and assets. I'd like to ask Councillor Jamie Scrivens to do that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So what you've got in front of you is an impact report that will outline the issues that have been faced and positive developments whilst how the services have been run under Halo Leisure. I won't go into too much detail because, as we're aware, Merthyr Leisure Trust was had the transfer of the services back in 2015. Following the liquidation of the trust, Halo Leisure has been safeguarding our council assets for the last 2 years. So hopefully the report will give you a pretty in-depth, holistic view of what's been going on since. I imagine people have got a lot of different questions they want to ask. We've got staff from Halo online, we've got the internal officers as well. So that's all I need to say, really, Chair. And I'll open up to the floor now if anyone wants to debate or ask any questions around the report.
Okay. Other questions? Councillor Jones?
We've got a few, Chair. First one's on page 21, and it's number 5.61. And it says Halo Leisure via an agreed SLA of full operational responsibility for the Merthyr Tydfil Centre's energy efficiency interventions. And they have delivered clear and measurable savings, and goes on to say water usage saved by 50%, electricity consumption by 44%. I presume from that they've been assisted by our own energy officers, or are we talking about their own energy staff?
I would imagine that it's not supported by our own energy officer, but if I hand over to Ryan as well, right? Can we just confirm that? Is that correct in saying that?
Yeah, what I'll do, I'll bring Mike in, the partnership manager for Halo. But firstly, I will say that Halo and internal officers have been working together for the last just over 2 years in terms of looking at different interventions to make at certainly the leisure centre, because that was the main kind of energy consumer facility. So we have worked directly with the property services team in particular, and we have made a couple of interventions together to go down that route. But so Halo haven't been working alone, but obviously Halo have been focused on making those interventions. And if I bring Mike in, Mike will be able to explain those kind of interventions over the last year, which have brought us that kind of 44% saving for electricity, for instance. Councillor Jones, Mike, I don't know if you want to come in, please.
Yeah, sorry. Most of what we've done has been in collaboration with the officers. So worked with property service really to identify what the issues were. So I think primarily the main one on there, which you'll see is the water consumption, was pretty much on our first day there. We met with property services and they highlighted it. And then I guess what we did is, use our expertise of running a swimming pool and identifying the problem. So use our own technicians then and some of our almost contractors elsewhere to find out what those issues were and reduce consumption.
Right, so that's the answer then. We are working in conjunction with our own energy officers. Because from my personal view, there's still a lot of money to be saved by doing different things to save energy on all fronts there. Would that be acceptable?
Yeah, I was going to jump in on Clive's question then and just say, have you identified what needs to be done, and is there a timescale of doing that work?
Yeah, I'll come back in there as well. So we constantly have these conversations to the point where we've had 2 internal conversations over the last 2 weeks, one along with Halo Leisure, and also we've had a meeting with 2 consultants, 2 companies that facilitate kind of decarbonisation works. So these plans are all progressing. There's opportunities to go into Welsh Government for decarbonisation funding, which we have to kind of go in and get that finance. So, we're definitely looking at scoping out what finances are out there, certainly for Welsh Government. We've got a plan in place to develop a phased plan, phase 1, phase 2, in terms of reconfiguring that building. And there are other plans to reconfigure the building as a whole as well. So there's many plans. We know there's many savings we can make. And we are looking at different interventions over the next year or 2 and probably longer term as well. So, yeah, it's an ongoing thing, councillors.
Yeah, that ties up with further question, which is on page 23 under 6.2, where you talk about progressing further energy efficiency and decarbonisation projects to reduce operating costs. But in the previous sentence, you referred to a delivery with a target of 5 active volunteers. Could you probably tell me, Ryan, what the volunteers are involved with exactly?
What section? Sorry, Councillor Jones.
Sorry,
are you referencing there for the volunteers? Sorry.
Yeah, it's 6.2,
Page 23.
Yeah, 6.23.
I'll bring in. Yeah, thank you very much. I'll bring in Mike on that one from Halo again, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's on a whole where we want to be. So those volunteers are in relation to the community outreach bits that we want to work on moving forwards. The second bit, I think it's grammatical of the progression of the further energy efficiency is related to what we want to do in general. That's not related to the volunteers.
Right. So can you give me an example of what the 5 volunteers are involved with currently?
This is the volunteers we'd want to bring in. So if I look at how we run some of our schemes, so autism swimming as an example,
Right.
we got swimming teachers that would be involved in that. The view is, which we went out for last year, is volunteers, so helpers in the water to run that. The carers respite program, volunteers who'd want to be involved in that. So that's more around the sort of community outreach and engagement programs that we offer.
Right. Okay. Thanks. My other question is on top of the page, on page 23, under 5.26, because it refers there to the antisocial behaviour has been a challenge throughout 2025, with considerable negative feedback from customers and staff alike. And you refer then there, a new CCTV system was installed in liaison with MTCBC. Security staff were hired during the holidays and on Friday evenings, and the centre managers attended specific conflict management sessions. I know that you had particular problems during the summer months with particularly youngsters during the school holidays, who, by the look of it, had nothing better to do than cause problems for the leisure centre. So with the new CCTV system and other things that we've mentioned there, are you anticipating in future holidays, long holidays, that he won't have the same problems again?
I'll come in there if that's okay, Chair. As we all know, antisocial behaviour, you can't preempt anything. I think what we had last year was a brand new facility that was focused inherently on young people, and is of a quality that people will go there, and naturally you can have some antisocial behaviour. So, we didn't expect it to be as bad as what it was, and I think we had to make those kind of quick step kind of reactions or interventions to kind of safeguard staff and customers within that facility, but it also opened up some of the kind of gaps within the facility as well. So I know, Councillor Jones, you focus on the enhanced CCTV, for instance. So, we realised that there weren't enough CCTV for technology down there that covered all of the kind of front area of the building. So we worked fast. We put some more additional CCTV in there. We financed lanyards, camera lanyards for the Halo staff. Obviously, we relate to the fact that Halo staff have gone on training to kind of counteract some of this stuff. So I think it's more of now. We'll see what happens now in the spring and summer seasons, and we'll keep in touch with our internal colleagues in the neighbourhood team. We'll keep in contact with South Wales Police, etc., and we'll just keep managing the process as it goes. And if we have to bring in other interventions, bringing in security guards on a Friday night isn't ideal by any stretch, and we shouldn't really be doing this. No. But that's probably one of the extremes that I think Halo got to a point that they had no choice. That's how bad it was down there, as you can appreciate, because I know you're down there quite a lot, Councillor Jones. So, yeah, again, we can't preempt nothing. I think we'll just see how it goes. We'll keep in contact with South Wales Police and our internal officers, and we'll see and start preempting what we could do alternatively as well down there, just to kind of offset this. But, yeah, it's just an ongoing thing, and we'll just see how it goes.
As a matter of interest, Chair, because I know the last summer holidays, there were youngsters riding bikes, getting into the main hall through the emergency doors, causing absolute havoc. Did you manage to identify any of these youngsters? And if so,
I'll bring in Mike there, because Mike was the main one phoning South Wales Police and complaining, and worked on some of these interventions and seen firsthand, and is obviously a staff experienced this. So, Mike, do you mind coming in and just offsetting some of that, please?
Yeah, I think when South Wales Police engaged and their community officers were there, my understanding is that they identified a couple of them, and there was some antisocial behaviour sort of bits put on them. I think their main concern last year is we were phoning them. By the time they arrived, almost the issue had unfolded because the children had left, which is why now having that CCTV in place means that there's a clear way to identify them moving forwards.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And on that point, obviously we've got our own CCTV network, so when they are leaving facilities, whether that be with a car,
they can be
the indoor market we've had issues with as well. Obviously our internal network is shared with South Wales Police, and they've had some successes in capturing people just by them going up through the streets as well and they take a by the car. But
Yes.
we obviously tracking that as well.
Great, that's great, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas, do you want to come in?
I have a question, but can I just make a comment on the last point there about the antisocial behaviour down the centre? Obviously, it's in the Mawrth ward, and I really believe that we shot ourselves in the foot when we first opened the skate park. We announced it on social media, but we didn't tell our police, we didn't tell the local police or the partners. So it kicked off, on the first day, right? And then, we never got control of it then for a little while after. So I really think, this summer, when the Easter holidays come in, I think, the police need to be an active partner in the solution. So that's my point there. But coming back to the report, it's pleasing to read really, and in 5.6 and 5.22, 5.6 it talks about the increases in the numbers attending our leisure service areas, and in 5.22 it mentions the increases we've got in our catering. I'd like to ask Mike really how he sees the growth in both those areas going forward, and how much growth there could possibly be.
I think with the catering, it's an interesting one because I guess Merthyr Leisure Centre specifically, the catering provision had been switched off, hadn't it, prior to us taking over. So I think that's had really strong growth comparing 2024 to 2025. 2026 has started off fairly strong. I think it'll max out with its current provision where it's based. I think we've had some discussions with officers around a bit of a restructure to the catering and front of house area to see if we can relocate it and put it in an area of higher footfall. So it is that sort of key focal point when you walk in and when the members are walking past. So I think it'll keep going slightly, but then it will, I think it'll plateau slightly there. It'll reach its tipping point. Cyfarthfa Park and Aberfann's catering, again, been really positive. I think they were in a good position anyway. And I think we've seen some positive increases income-wise. We've put some decent systems in place there, done the menus, resolved some of the staffing and the ordering. So I think they're operating and functioning as a catering provision should. Participation, I think when we look at it almost on a month-by-month basis, it's increasing every single month. Supported by the membership base and the swimming lessons in terms of getting people through the door. But even just the sort of ad hoc pay-as-you-go unique visitors have really started to pick up. I think that's a trend we'll see continuing. We know, I guess, 2024 and in 2025, it was still a consolidating the service and keeping it open and making those improvements. Whereas I think now, especially early 26, when you look at the figures, they've really started to increase again.
Thomas,
Thank you, Mike. That's excellent news. Thank you, and let's hope it grows more. Thank you.
Before I call Councillor Leighton in, Mike, in terms of the data, the stats on usage, could you share them with us from the day? And I don't mean today, but maybe next week when you have time, from what it was with the Leisure Trust to what it was in 24, 25 to what it is 25 to 26 to, well, maybe when the financial year ends. Maybe would you be able to share that with us?
Yeah, we share them with officers on a monthly basis, so they've got the data. I think our one would be we know the data's accurate from when we put our proper system in September 2025, but there was a point where we had a bit of a halo system, a bit of the previous system, and some of the figures we weren't 100% accurate on. So just edge on the air of warning that September 25 onwards we're happy with. The previous ones, I guess there's a little bit of guesswork around them, but yeah, they can be shared.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Councillor Leighton?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Just a quick one around the splash park in Cyfarthfa Park, and I know it's stating there's been some extensive work done in Splash Park. Are we confident going forward for this year we're not going to be experiencing any more issues? Because I do recall we were shut for almost the whole year and the whole time of the summer holidays. I mean, is this checked regular and we sort of ready to go for the spring? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll come in there, Chair, and I'll bring Mike in then afterwards. So thanks for that. Yeah, Councillor Leighton, it's something we looked at over the last probably year or so in terms of some of the failings from the previous operator in terms of maintenance, etc. And we're quite lucky that we brought in Halo. We're excellent in terms of looking at maintenance plans across the board, and having those experience, those kind of failings up in the splash pad, for instance, over the last 2 years, pretty much. It was really disappointing. So what we've done is spend a lot of money all through the summer or going into September on actually the splash pad itself and some of the working parts. And what we're looking at then is we've got a maintenance plan in place ready to open whenever we see that we have the right weather. So you can imagine Mike now looking at the weather forecast, and we know that if we need to open at the end of March, for instance, we know that facility will be working and will be open over a set period, even though it's before the programme date. So at the moment, and Mike can come in and confirm this, but I think the plans there are to open in April. But if we want to open it in March and we've got a hot weather period, we'll do it then. So Mike, just to confirm, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I think last summer it was the initial 2 to 3 weeks on the reopening. We had everything started and then had a pump failure, and the pumps are imported from Germany, so we had delays with them, and the supplier did. But primarily from, I think, almost May, June, July, September onwards, apart from I think one day where the water was shut off to the park, most of the time the features were on there. What we did this year is we planned the dewinterization with the original installer, so Ustigate who installed it for you. So they've already been to site. They were there probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. Everything's up and running. There's a few small bits of remedial work to do, but in effect, if you wanted it turned on in 10 minutes time, we could get it ready to be turned on 10 minutes time. And I think the asset work that was done on it last year, so we made the decision that whereas we replaced one pump initially, we replaced them all moving into the winter. So we knew that coming into this year, the asset had in effect been refurbished and ready to go. It's live plant and machinery, so we could be unlucky. A pump could fail and something could go wrong. But realistically, we've done everything possible, and we've got the reports to show that it's in much better condition than it has been.
Okay, thank you both. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Chair. I've read this report. It's all right, but it's a paper report, isn't it? It's only telling me things what questions asked. I can't see anything, because when you read the report, they say about the improvements they've done and other work in the place. I was on the last ledger committee down in Radicar, going back 10 years ago, whatever it was. I'll be honest, it was a bit of a sham. But any chance of us holding meetings down in Radicar to discuss this and to have a look what they're doing overall? Because it's all right talking, yeah, as I said, the paper exercise, but it's telling me a bit, but we can't see what the improvements are doing and everything else.
Yeah, I'd mind coming in there quickly if that's okay, Chair. To be honest, there's nothing to hide, Councillor Smith. At the end of the day, all I can focus on is the impact that Halo have made on the leisure services and those assets. And over the last 2 years, they've made a massive impact on there. And, I got no other way of doing this. So, sorry.
Right, can I say, I'm not knocking it, right? And they're doing a good job. But at the end of the day, there's buildings there, a lot of money going into it, and we want to see what's happening. People tell me they're good down there, right? But I want to see what they do in it, what changes they're bringing into it. Because last time we was down there, it was a bit of a shed when it was a mess. So
it was an absolute mess. And we're happy to hold a site visit down there for councillors or members, Scrutiny Committee members. There's nothing to hide. There's obviously still improvements that need to be made across the board in that centre, and there are plans in place. And again, over the last 2 years, the impact of Halo has been nothing but positive. So, happy to have a conversation outside of this. Happy to hold a site visit. I know Halo would absolutely love for all councillors or Scrutiny Committee members to come down and visit the facilities. I'm happy to do so.
Yeah, I think if we could do that, that would be really good. It did say in the report about problems with the building previously. So if we could come there and have maybe a walkthrough, and then maybe you've identified what could be improved and what funding is needed, I think that would be really good. So we can arrange that.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bill, you done?
No, I just say, when I was there with Merthyr Leisure, right, going back 10, 15 years, 10 years ago, it was a bit of a sham. It's all changed now. It's much improved. People are happy with it. So let me clarify that before somebody said it down there. It's not a mess. It's not a mess. 10 years ago, it was a sham.
Okay. Thanks, Bill. Councillor Joyce?
Yes, I've got another question, Chair. It's on page 19, 5.4. And that's a follow-on from the previous 5.3, where it says maintenance costs have been higher than initially anticipated, largely as a result of addressing legacy issues inherited at the start of the interim contract and ensuring facilities remain safe. When you look at 5.4, it says in there that despite these pressures, the current projected subsidy remains better than originally budgeted for over the reporting period. This is due to an improved financial control system put in place by Halo Leisure, strengthened income performance, and a continued progressive joint work between the Council and colleagues at Halo Leisure. I've interpreted that, Chair, that we've been saving money on the subsidy. Have you any idea how much savings you're talking about?
I'm happy to come in there, and I'll bring Mike in afterwards. So yeah, obviously, it's taken a while to get the feet in the door in terms of Halo and understanding what the issues are with the facility. As you can appreciate, Councillor Jones, again, as you're down there pretty much every day. And obviously it takes a while to set up these interventions and get them done. So, and they've made headways in terms of sorting those out over the last reporting year. And that's why they've spent so much on maintenance and getting things right. In terms of the subsidy and the decrease in that, it's obviously based on additional income brought in from additional memberships and catering, etc. We do have the exact figure there because it's a conversation I had with Mike previously or earlier, sorry. So I don't know if Mike's got that to hand in terms of what that looks like for this year, or we can just bring that in anyway. Mike?
Yeah, I'd probably echo what Ryan said there. We probably make quite a conscious effort of trying to get sort of the assets under control and resolve some issues that hadn't been resolved previously. So almost playing catch up on them. And I guess the point is we've done that within the operating budget that we provided. So we've increased the income on the courses, catering and memberships, probably above the projections that we had initially for that sort of first full year. So with that in mind, there's an overspend on maintenance, but agreed with the officers. And then by the Q3, so December 2025, we had 20,000 surplus on the budget that we'd provided. We're ahead of that at the moment, but obviously quarterly figures aren't fully in yet, but confident we'll come in under the budget we'd provided.
Thank you. Good news.
Okay. Thanks, both. Phil, do you want to go in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to back up what Councillor Thomson said about the report, which is very positive in the main, although in certain parts of it, it does lack some detail and some support, which I think is what Bill was referring to as well. But I referred in particular to point 7.1 and 7.1 on under what we need to do next. In there's a reference to a full-scale long-term procurement exercise planned for later this year. Is there any way that we can provide some detail or some clarity as to what that entails? It seems a very positive promise, but I'd like to know, the committee would like to know what that particular exercise involves.
Yeah, without going into too much detail in terms of the long-term procurement opportunity there, obviously, as you're fully aware as council members, we're working on the long-term procurement strategy. We've been working with Cabinet, and we're working with heads of service and department leads in terms of making sure this kind of strategy, and when we go out to the sector, that document, that opportunity is right, and I think it is right as well. So we'd need at that near point now where we nearly finalise the strategy and what that looks like, and then that will be replicated out to e-tender Wales then in terms of bringing in the right provider, whether that's Halo Leisure or an alternative, but they're all having the kind of same chance in terms of managing our leisure services and our assets. So yeah, it's going to be a great opportunity for someone. You can automatically see the impact Halo have made over the last 2 years, 2.5 years. And that's picking up a system, a building that's not fit for purpose, or facilities that weren't fit for purpose. But now, we are certainly making headway across the board in many kind of facets of that business. So, yeah, it's going to be a good opportunity.
Is that potential tender for the procurement for any future provider, will that be something which will be shared with this committee?
Yeah, it's going to be shared with all councillors.
Okay, and any indication of when that may be? It says later this year. Are we talking?
It's going to be relatively soon. I'm not quite sure what facility is going to go through, whether it'll go through Cabinet initially and then out to full council, or whatever facility. But councillors, all the councillors should be aware of the progress we've made since we last met, when the option was agreed in October 2025, I believe. So yeah, it's worthwhile you having progress on the procurement journey we're on.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, in following on from there, I've never seen a figure. Obviously, the Leisure Trust had a service level agreement of X figure, and do we know what proportion went towards the leisure facilities compared to what we pay Halo? And I'm not asking you to answer this right now online, but could we get that info? Because I would like to know.
Yeah, I've got the info and I've got the figures. It's just the difficulty we got is it was so broad in terms of the previous operator, because they had libraries, Red House, as you know, and all the other kind of facilities, and the staff and infrastructure is totally different to what it is now. And we have to consider the fact that, the libraries are gone, Red House is gone, and other parts of the facility is gone as well, which would have taken a massive amount of that chunk out of that. So, based on the fact that when I wrote the previous Halo report, or might have been the options report, in October, I think we were around 1.3 million aligned to the management of the leisure contract and assets, out of what it was previously 2.4 million. So what we used to pay to Wellbeing Merthyr, which is out in the public sphere anyway. So going from 2.4 million to 1.3 million, give or take a couple of pounds, I think that's where we're about, off the top of my head.
Okay, and in terms of the indoor bowls, that's no longer part of. Do we have any?
It's no longer part of the contract, but I think it's still retained within Zoe's department.
Okay.
Or Zoe's service area, sorry.
Okay, it's not part of this report anyway, is it? So, right. Okay.
No, but just for clarity, Chair, yeah, it doesn't form part of any contract, but it sits within the service asset plan for regeneration. So should there be, any queries, etc., on the bowls, that will automatically be aligned to regeneration to investigate and effectively resolve where possible. Then, just for clarity.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I've just got one question left. I see prices went up last year. Did we see any drop in people using the facility at that point? And what are we doing to make sure people on low income can still use and access the leisure facilities?
I'll bring Mike in on the first point now, Chair. On the second point, in terms of low income families, etc., we're currently looking at the concessions section of the procurement strategy, the long-term procurement strategy. So we're just trying to focus on what those concessions look like. And we were right on the back end of that. It came up yesterday, funny enough. So yeah, we're just looking at opportunities there. But I think longer term, what we're wanting is for companies to come in and share their ideas in terms of how they reach these hard to reach people in these target areas, these sectors. So there are plans to kind of assist them. We just don't know what they are, in a definitive sense. In terms of the first part, Mike, do you want to come in because you've seen it firsthand?
Yeah, memberships figures. So courses and general memberships. No, there's no drop off with the price increase. So when you look at the figures month on month, they've continued to increase. The same with participation. And I think we have got options there. So whereas we have the headline price, there are discounted memberships. So there's an easy membership, carers, over 60s, under 24. So there are different options there for memberships and pay as you go as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Does anybody else?
Yeah, just one last one. On page 22, under 5.24, it states that Halo Leisure secured grant finance to transform two first floor office spaces into a food pantry facility that is now fully established with work ongoing to allocate the space to an appropriate delivery partner or user group to meet identified community needs. So it's all that up and running. And can you tell me, particularly, I mentioned food pantry. Is this in relation to members of the public being able to attend there so that food parcels are handed out?
In some respects, I'll come in. Sorry, Chair. Yeah, in some respects, it's for everyone that is needed those kind of facilities. So what we've done over the course of the year is give Halo Leisure finance to develop two areas that weren't used upstairs in Aberfan Leisure Centre, and we're more conscious of the fact that we didn't have any kind of food resource, a pantry or a hub in the Merthyr Vale kind of area as well. So what we've got, we did have 11 food establishments across, I think it was 9 different wards. Now we're on 13 in 10 different wards. So we nearly got one in every ward to help support the citizens that need it, and that's what we're facilitating. So we've got everything up and running to a section. Now we just need to develop what that kind of management scheme looks like, because we want it volunteer run. I know we touched upon volunteers previously, but now we want to get it run. So we've got some really good examples of volunteer run facilities, Hope Pantry being one, Get Your Day being another, in terms of some of the stuff there. So we just need to kind of develop what that looks like and bring in volunteers from the local area to help facilitate that facility, along with obviously staff from Halo. So there should be some exciting plans over the next couple of months.
So that's great. You fill in the gap, then that's not there. We can't right in that area. That's great. Thank you.
No worries.
Nobody else has indicated any questions, so move on to comments. Councillor Layton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say, I think thanks for bringing the report. I think it's quite a positive report, and I think you're aware yourselves. There's still work to be done, but I think it is going in the right direction. There's some really positive information in here, so thank you for that.
Thanks, Councillor Layton. Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Like I said earlier, it was pleasing to read this report. I think it's been one of the best decisions we've made over the last few years, is to bring in a company, a professional company, to run our leisure services. The transformation, as we can see before us, is amazing, right? It is really, really good. And I'm looking really positive to the future, how our leisure services improve going forward. So yeah, thank you very much, Halo.
Thanks, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Jones?
Yes, I agree with Councillor Layton. This is a positive report. Some interesting information and facts and figures within it. The very fact that usage in all of the cities, particularly in the leisure centres, has increased significantly from what it used to be. And clearly, one aspect is the fact that the swimming pool is up and running, and that's another facility. Both places that we used extensively, particularly in the Merthyr Tydfil one. So I think it's all going in the right direction. And from what I can see, the public are, they're happy with the services that have been provided. Yes, there have been problems in various places, but this time round, we got a contractor in that knows where the problems are and clearly tried to deal with them as quickly as possible, and others where the work is being done. So it's a very good report, Chair.
Yeah. That's Councillor Jones. Councillor Smith?
Sorry, Chair, I'm going to knock it off. I support the report. It's very good. We can see the improvements talking about, great. But the only thing I'll ask the officers to do, when they do this pantry report, can it come back as soon as possible? Because if we're going to set all these panties about, because I know the government mentioned when up in Swansea Road, but I'm concerned about the governors.
Right, we'll take that up with Ryan. Okay, thanks, Councillor Smith. Yeah, I'd just like to thank you for your report. It's really good, really positive. You've taken on a building that is still probably very, very challenging and needs quite a bit of work, considering it's such a newish building. It'd be great to see when we come to visit what aspirations you have for the building, and I look forward to seeing that. So thank you, Mike, Scott and Ryan, for attending and answering our questions.
So, thank you very much.
Well, shall we stay in? So yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, thanks all. Okay. Right, moving on. Agenda item 6, receiving and awarding grants policy. I'd like to invite Councillor Jamie Scrivens to present.
Right, thank you, Chair. So the receiving and awarding grants policy, just a bit of context, historically as an authority, we've never had a corporate policy around the governance, receipt management and the awarding of grants. So what we're hoping by introducing the policy is that this will tackle any risk exposure and efficiencies and provide a consistent approach and framework to how we're governing and handling grants across the authority. What I will say, Chair, is if anyone feels after the meeting that we need to do further work on this or have a separate workshop, I'm more than happy to do that and smooth that out so when we get to full council, like what we did with the last policy. There was a lot that came through last minute. Let's try and air everything out. I'm happy to put extra sessions on if we need to after this as well.
Thank you. Zoe, do you want to say anything before we open it up?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would like to. So I think, the introduction of this policy is going to be very beneficial for the local authority. As Councillor Scriven said, it's just going to provide that opportunity for us to, streamline all of our processes right across the board, and that's from the, receiving of grants and actually through the awarding of grants as well. Again, I'd like to reinforce the fact that even though the regeneration team have developed this policy, we have not developed this exclusively from the perspective of the regeneration team. We have engaged with colleagues and officers right across the board to ensure that there's been, the opportunity to feed into this report. We've taken all comments and considerations on board, and I think on the back of that, the additional thing to note then is that, again, should this policy be adopted by full council once it's been through scrutiny this evening, the relevant departments will continue to have responsibility for their own receiving and awarding of grants. We are just effectively creating that framework that allows officers to follow. We will be looking at robust monitoring mechanisms to put in place corporately, so we can particularly have that overview on what grants are being received and where departments can work together, etc. But as I said, we've developed this policy for the local authority, but the responsibility and accountability will remain with each relevant department as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Owen. Open up to questions. Seeing Louise Pernand, Councillor Jones, he's always first. Yeah, we're going to be quicker with these fingers. Councillor Jones.
Chair, this is a very comprehensive and detailed report. There's actually 22 pages of the report itself and another 10 pages in relation to the application forms. So this would cover anything from, I don't know, somebody applying for £1,000 to much higher amounts. For those who are applying for smaller grants, do you consider that there is a lot to be deal with in here for those that are applying for, and might sound to them, I'm not saying it is, but might sound to them rather bureaucratic when they're applying for small grants? And I agree that we need to have consistency right across the authority. And do you answer that?
So do you want to come in?
Yeah, apologies, I couldn't take myself off mute then. So yeah, so the policy will apply right across the board. Obviously, in terms of application processes, Councillor Jones, they're going to vary dependent on the levels of grant that we have available and that we will be awarding. So processes will become much more robust. Depending on the levels of funding that is being applied for then effectively, but we're just trying to make sure that there is that overarching framework that is followed right across the board, really.
So again, going back to the small amount, you don't think, as I said, there's pages of this, that's going to pot off anybody when they look at that? And what they're supposed to apply, abide by in the various pages and paragraphs.
So can I come in there?
Yeah.
Just as well, Councillor. So these are linked to programmes as well. So the funding programme will be a lot bigger than the individual grants. So the officers will be looking at that programme overview and making sure that's adhered to. And then those smaller grants that are given out, it's not just that due diligence check, really, and it's managing expectations, isn't it? So from the outset, I think if officers can inform applicants of what the expectations are for that particular grant, and again, it links into whatever the grant funder's terms and conditions are as well. But this is just that process plan for any queries that do come through to officers to make sure they're following that due diligence and to safeguard us against any audit and challenge.
Yes, which I fully understand. I got another question. It's on page 37, Chair. And it's the second block down there, headed Establish Internal Governance and Responsibilities. And it states there, first line, nominate a lead officer and define roles for finance, procurement, legal and service leads. Do we know at this stage who that lead officer is likely to be?
Officers, I think, so I'll just come in here again, sorry. Officers will have those discussions with the various departments once those grants or programmes come in, and then we'll be told by those managers then who will be allocated to that particular grant.
Right, I've obviously misread this then. It won't be an officer who will have overall, seeing overall what's happening right across the whole authority. That won't be the case. There'll be a lead officer per department, is that right?
per grant programme, I would have
Or
thought.
per grant programme?
Yes.
Right.
So it's all going to be programme dependent. So as I said at the start, councillor, you know, it's going to be depending on what department is effectively leading on a programme, would have that accountability. So for example, if I use an example as the local growth fund, so that's based within my service area, so within regeneration housing. Ryan is the lead officer, so the manager of that programme, and then Ryan has a respective team then that sits under him, and then we'd have our own relevant accountant, etc., that we would work with. So it depends on who will be responsible and who that will align to.
So it'd be the same consistency of application as a result of this policy, whenever that goes through council, that'll be applied right across the board in every department. So the consistency will be there from one department to the next.
Yes, that's what we're trying to achieve through this policy, that everyone follows the same processes when receiving grants and awarding grants, to ensure, you know, robust due diligence and, as Laura said, to protect the authority then for any audit processes.
Right. Well, because it does beg the question that in the past, over the years, previously, when we didn't have a grants policy, that I don't know, there would have been some inconsistency taking place right across, because there was no policy to work to. Is that the case?
I wouldn't know. I think we're just trying to ensure. So the introduction of the policy is not to say then, there's been inconsistency right across the board. I think we're just trying to ensure that there is full consistency and there is a guidance or guide, apologies, for officers to follow. So it just creates that structure and procedure for the authority. So I think it doesn't reflect on necessarily, you know, that there are inconsistencies on the board. I think it just ensures that there is that consistency moving forward, particularly then if we try to set up, you know, that sort of robust monitoring from a corporate perspective as well.
Okay, thanks.
Going on, sorry, Councillor Thomas, going on from what Councillor Jones said, could there still be inconsistency if there's different managers interpreting this policy potentially slightly differently throughout? Shouldn't there be like one person overseeing the grants throughout? I know that's a big role, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So we'll take that into consideration, Chair. I think, you know, through the introduction of this policy, Laura and I have had conversations with colleagues around, you know, how do we look at monitoring this corporately moving forward, particularly for any reporting. So for example, you know, if we needed to bring any reports back to committee in future or anyway, that we had that sufficient information. So I think one of the actions, particularly following today's session, is to consider how we look at that monitoring. We have talked about how we particularly monitor that through the senior leadership team, particularly with the grants we are receiving as an authority, and ensuring that, you know, we've got that transparency on what's coming through on a corporate level. So I think, you know, we need to just do some further work around, you know, how do we ensure then that the implementation of the policy, as you said, is fully understood and is being adhered to across the board then.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thomas? You're on mute. Yeah.
Sorry, I knocked my hand off there, not the thing, sorry. Right. Okay, I want to go back to the community grants, really, the small community grants. So currently the process is, you know, for Fossa Fran or for Biffa, It's a simple form for us to help our community members fill in, and it's passed quite easy. Now, because I do believe, right, I think what we are proposing here for some of these small grants of 100, 150, 200 pound, is quite intensive, right? So is there some way, perhaps, when we look at the strategy, that we look at community grants of £1,000 and below to make it a lot easier than what we're proposing here?
Lord, did I want to come in on that? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's not meant for the applicant really to be onerous on the applicant. It's for the officers really to have that information to hand, so they can ask that information, and it's always going to be in line with any terms and conditions of any funding requirements anyway. So I think we're not trying to put more work onto the smaller organisations in that effect. We just need to make sure that, for example, the money's being spent in the way that it's being said it's being spent, and whatever outcomes, for example, that they said they're going to achieve, they are achieving, and officers chasing up that information as well. So we've got that monitoring there. Application forms, I would assume, would stay as they currently are in regards to the community grants. It's just that process that officers need to go through to make sure we've got that information to hand, and that it's all on a level playing field really as to what we're asking and reporting on.
I've got a second.
So I think Jamie wanted to come in there.
I was just going to say, Councillor Thompson, I think it'd be useful to have a workshop for councillors around the ponds to go through that, because I premeditated that would come up anyway. Even when I first thought it myself, I thought, well, how's that going to apply? But I think Laura's pretty much at the nail on the head in terms of that pro forma in place for staff. And like in terms, like, I know Cheryl's great with the grants and everything that she does, but obviously making sure that we've got some follow-up after as well, and we make sure there's a good monitoring evaluation process consistent across the board. So I'm Laura, I don't think it'll make too much of a difference to the process we currently go through now, not for applicants, but for ourselves as staff and what's going on. So I think a workshop to go through all that with councillors, I think we need to have that just to alleviate any concerns.
Yeah, that was a question I was going to ask Jamie. That was just one of the ones I was going to say, because what it was like with the events policy. We can take it back to our groups, but they've all got another 100 questions that are asking us.
Yeah.
So the question I was going to ask was when it was going to come to council for approval. So how much time have we got to look at this policy?
Can I come in, please, Chair, on that? So the response is, absolutely. I think, I'd really, really welcome having a workshop. It was something I anticipated might come up this afternoon. But I think on the events policy, having that wider workshop was very, very beneficial to ensure we could take all member concerns, questions, queries, etc. on board, and help to evolve the events policy into something that was fit for purpose right across the board, and of course that's now been adopted. So that was a really positive process. Happy to have a session. I think the grants policy is, as I said, for internal officers to utilise, but I appreciate there will be concerns across the board of how this impacts the community, particularly when accessing grants. So the workshop will be helpful. In terms of your other question, Councillor Thomas, around when we're looking to bring this to council, I think time is on our side this time, where perhaps it wasn't previously. So it's unlikely it's going to come to committee until June. So I think we've got sufficient time to have that workshop, and also it'll give Laura and myself some additional time, I think, to work on some of the monitoring processes that we've referred to this afternoon. So I think in advance of it coming to council, not only will members have that opportunity to feed into the policy and help amend should that be the case, but also to try and understand how we will monitor and have that overview moving forward.
Thank you, Joe. Chair, I got one more question. I think, like Zoe, I think will be the person to answer the question. Following on from our conversation we had earlier today, Zoe, really, right, about, the pride in place monies, etc., that's going to be coming down the line to the council, and then the I don't know what you call that board now, right? The long-term plan, the pride in place board, or whatever it's called, right? They will be deciding on some grants and where that grants will be going, right? Will officers of the council and councillors then have oversight through this grants policy to see, how that money was decided as well?
So the pride in place that is now called, which was plans for neighbourhood and prior to that was long-term plans for town, just to avoid any confusion on name,
We're all
they all
confused,
call it
so we're all
different
confused.
things.
We're
I
all
know,
confused.
I still call it the wrong name now, councillor. That's all going to be governed and the decision making by the board, but with ultimate responsibility for spend by the local authority. So I think that's probably something that Laura and I are going to have to take offline to consider how this policy could apply, because of course we are accountable for that finance, but it's what structures we could effectively place onto the board then, who are the decision makers. So I think if we couldn't necessarily use the policy directly, I think a lot of the processes and procedures that we've identified within the policy we can take through to the board to suggest that the same mechanisms and procedures are followed, because I think this is, particularly with the awarding of grants, Councillor Thomas, this is best practice that we've learned effectively through the delivery of the UK SPF programme. I think if it's not something that we can ultimately enforce or push on the board to necessarily follow, in a sense, I think the advice of following that mechanism would absolutely be used, because I think, as I said, we've learned so many lessons over the past few years. This structure now is really, really effective in terms of that grant delivery.
Yeah, I totally agree, right? Chair, my last bit is not a question, but to add what Zoe said, I believe the report should be all-encompassing. All monies going out from the authority in any form of grant should be covered under this policy. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, 2 seconds. Just for my clarity now, is this an internal policy? Will we be giving this to people applying, or is this just for our officers? If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's an internal policy.
So the groups who are applying won't be seeing this. No. Had to go over.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's for us. So apologies, Councillor Jones. It's for internal officers to all follow the same processes, really, when receiving a grant and allocating a grant. So, as Laura highlighted in response to one of the questions earlier, apologies, can't remember which one, but this isn't going to, affect groups in terms of then applying. It's going to affect officers. Affect is the wrong word, because it sounds like it's going to be a negative thing. It's going to support officers in terms of undertaking relevant, thorough due diligence, which ultimately safeguards us and the authority overall.
Thank you. Mr. Josh,
well, listening to the questions and the answers, has this draft gone to the audit department that covers Merthyr Tydfil and asked them for their views on it? They might, I don't know, want to suggest something that needs to be put in there that perhaps is not currently there. Has that been thought of?
No, I'm not sure if we shared with orders. So we've shared with departments right across the authority. So it's been to legal and finance as an example. Not sure about audit, but we can most definitely share, Councillor Jones, if we haven't, but Laura will be able to provide further detail than myself.
Yeah, I'll double check on that list of stakeholders, but yeah, it was finance and legal, but I don't think necessarily audit specific, so we can go back to those.
Yeah, I think it should go to them as well, Jane. Okay, thanks.
Thanks all. Phil, do you want to...
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I think the question that you asked earlier about whether it was for internal or external observation covered what I was intended to ask. I was intended to ask something about reference for timing for windows for applications, but of course this doesn't cover this within there, and so that question I was going to pursue. I don't think it's appropriate to ask that now.
Okay, thanks, Jane. Thanks, Phil. I got a couple of questions, but I've been asked this before by constituents about transparency on funding. Do we publish lists of grants that we give out externally, and is that something that we could provide?
I don't believe we do. Right, correct me if I'm wrong here. So we go through our processes internally in terms of, robust due diligence. As I said, we've learned a lot of lessons through the UK SPF programme, but we wouldn't necessarily publish then who's been successful through that programme. Not as far as I am aware, but Rai, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, certainly over the last couple of years, we published good news stories and some impactful kind of projects that were funded via grant funding in different kind of spheres. But generally, we won't put a full list out there saying, use the social economy capital grant for SPF and use the 10 organisations that benefited from this funding. We just don't generally do that. The only time we share that information is generally through freedom of information requests that we get on a periodic basis. So not to say we shouldn't. I think we're more than happy to share that information. It's just we don't naturally do that, put out to the public knowledge, really.
Okay.
We do tend to, on the flip side, if we receive funding. So, for example, if we've received funding for a project through Transforming Towns, as an example, we'll go out to promote the fact that we've secured that funding. But as Ryan said, not necessarily then on the grant allocations that we made through grant programmes.
Okay, thank you. I'll try and make this into one question, but in terms of if a project isn't working, we've given external funding, who's responsible then for the clawback of that grant and the monitoring of that grant? Is it the individual departments, or especially on the clawback, who would take responsibility of trying to retrieve that money?
Yeah, so it'll be the responsibility of the relevant department. And for example, if there was a rationale for clawback, then if support was needed from additional colleagues across the local authority, such as legal as an example, then that relevant officer or team or department would engage with relevant colleagues to progress with any clawback requirements. But depending on the programme and where it sits, Chair, yeah, it would be the responsibility of that service area then effectively responsible for that overall finance.
Great, thank you. Any further questions? Nobody's indicated. Comments?
Yeah, Chair. I think to come back to the point you made earlier about do we publish any indication of where particular organisations have benefited from grants, and the answer was no, not obviously anyway. I think you're missing a potential PR opportunity there. I know I speak for the small community group of which I'm the chair, without the money that we've received from the council over the last 7 years, we would not be able to exist. And we do good work in the Carmarthen ward. And I'd be perfectly happy to stand up and say that we are only able to do the work that we do because of the funding we receive from this council. So I think the opportunity to demonstrate how many groups have benefited from funding from this council is an opportunity which should be taken, because it demonstrates the council and its councillors and its officers in the best of light.
Thanks, Phil. Councillor Thomas?
No, thank you, Chair. And, you know, I'm all for transparency. And as you all know, as councillors, you know, public perception is, you know, this money goes to the same people all the time, and it goes here and it goes there. So I believe, you know, being transparent with the proper policy, highlight who's having the money and the good work that's come from it, it can only be good. So, yeah, onwards and upwards again.
Thank you. Councillor Layton? Wait on me, Paula.
On mute.
Got me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say what Phil and Geraint just said now. Yes, that's great. But would we also be putting ourselves in a situation if some areas weren't accepted for that grant? It's just a comment, just in general, you know. I think it's great to put it out there. As you say, it's an opportunity missed, but I don't know, does it work then? Would you have backlash then from people who weren't given that grant, you know? Just a thought.
Yeah, okay. Fair comment. Councillor Jones?
Yes, I think this grants policy is overdue. We probably should have had this quite a while ago. And I agree with Councillor Geraint Thomas that we've asked questions now, goes back to our respective groups, and then various members, have you asked about this? Have you asked about it? You know, it is so. Having a workshop, I think, is a good thing. That when it comes to council, then we would have gone into this in with a fine tooth comb, and not just us, but everybody else, as elected member, had an opportunity to have an input. So, by the sound of it, so we've got just under 3 months to deal with it.
Yes, so as I said earlier, we have much more time, so you know that's positive. I'll engage with Neil and the chair around dates. I think if scrutiny members are happy to perhaps give us perhaps until sort of mid-April, just to start really considering the monitoring process as well. So it just allows us to bring further detail and information to that session. I think, you know, there have been some questions regarding the monitoring today, so I think it would be really useful to be able to provide answers to members in that next meeting then, or workshop, or whatever we're calling it, just to ensure we are responding to any queries that might arise on the day then. So, you know, if members are happy with that, I can engage with Neil for a date in mid-April, and hopefully we can look at you know, making that policy more robust where required, and finalising that in readiness for committee then.
Thank you. I know you give me a row for asking a question in comments, so you know. Right, I'd like to thank you for the policy. It is, like Clive said, it is overdue, and it will safeguard us as a local authority, and it will safeguard officers. And you know, I think I'm glad I asked. Yeah. Whether it was internal, because we were all going to have a meltdown with this, and giving it to our community groups. Yeah, so I'd like to thank you for bringing it to us. My one question was why now, and I think we've answered that, but somebody who works within third sector and writes grants, this can only be beneficial to us as a local authority. So,
yeah, I just really thank you all for your comments, obviously, and contributing to the conversation, and hopefully the workshop will bring out some more as well. Like, as Councillor Layton said, I think in terms of that process, if people aren't accepted, now we tackle that as well, be part of our workshop and identifying that. you know, as Councillor Thomas says, well, I'm quite open for the fact I'm not a fan of these grants where we just administer and they're externally handled elsewhere, but we've got to look at how we have a hand on the steering wheel with those as well. So no, I think there's relevant things today that have come up that we need to address as part of our workshop, and obviously clarification there's internal and how that'll affect the smaller community grants as well. You know, and I think we're more than happy as well if you want to go back to your groups and you have an idea of certain things that you'd like to go forward with our workshop. We've got extra time and make sure it's curated properly for all of you. But you know, thanks to Zoe and Laura for the report, and just for everyone for the contributions today. And hopefully this will go through smoothly and we'll have a policy in place that should have, well, really, we should have had on for a while, but yeah, it's really good work. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas, do you want to come back in? I'll let you on.
Yeah, just quickly, just on what Jamie said there, it'd be useful because I only can see this report on modern.gov, right? So, you know, I'm looking around there. So if you can share the actual report via email, that would be great.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, so happy to follow the same process as we did previously for the events policy workshop. So once we have a date, I'm happy to circulate the date to all members, and at the same time then I'll share the policy. I can outline the purpose of the workshop, and it hopefully gives that sufficient time for consideration for any questions to be brought forward. So if everyone's happy with that same approach, myself and Neil can agree a date this week, and I can get all that information out by the end of the week then.
Well, thank you. Okay, I'd like to thank Zoe, Ryan, Jamie for attending. And I'm sure this will be less painful than the events policy. So
never say never, Chair.
Yeah, well,
I'm quicker.
maybe, you're all good. All right, thank you for attending. You're welcome to stay, but I'm sure Ryan's gone already. But there we are.
No, I'm still here. Thank you very much.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jack.
Thanks, all.
Take care, all.
Bye.
Right, okay, moving on. Agenda item 7, the forward work programme. The next meeting is the 28th of April. There's been some amendments to the forward work programme. For April now, we have the destination management plan, housing development policy update, and then we've got 2 items we had originally penciled in have been postponed. That's the planning annual performance report and that annual empty property report. Over the next month or two, we'll start penciling some dates to plan a forward work programme for the new cycle. Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned that we're going to fit everything in because the number of meetings have changed from 7 to 5, and we're having to put reports in that we, you know, they're quite chunky, that are taking up quite a bit considerable time during that meeting. So how we're going to fit in what we want to do is a little bit of a concern for me.
Yeah.
I think all scrutinies are going to be the same. Councillor Jones, you agree?
Yeah, indeed. It's going to be a bit of a problem putting what in where. And perhaps we need to give officers, because sometimes we agreed an item's going to go on the agenda, and then sometimes, 2 or 3 weeks before it's due, for various reasons, the reports are pulled. I mean, for example, it's got Cavartha Park Foundation to be presented in the 26-27 cycle. My view, for example, in that one, is that perhaps a discussion could take place with the Cavartha Foundation to ascertain when would be the appropriate time of the year to be included there. And the same thing, we've got to kind of apply to the placemaking plan. It says the same thing, 26-27, and air quality report, 26-27. So the discussion you'll have with officers there may determine what time of the year it's going to go on the agenda.
Yeah, because what are we going to bring back on it? And my computer's just died on me. So Thomas, do you want to come in before?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. 2 points really. I know, like with the new cycle, and we're looking at every 8 weeks. But perhaps what we should look at is extending the time of the meetings if it is only 8 weeks, because shortly we're going to be back in the chamber as well. So we'll all be able to come into the council then for these meetings, and maybe allocating an extra hour to a meeting is the way forward. And I do agree, slightly. I'm going to disagree slightly with Clive about the Cyfarthfa Foundation, because I think that's a very, very important subject matter that we need to talk about very soon. And it may be, instead of coming to our scrutiny committee, it comes to before all council in a council setting to see, what are the plans and how they're progressing.
Yeah. Sorry, Chair, are you talking about a briefing session then, or a full agenda on the full council?
I think it needs more time in that, Clive, than just in the full council. But if it is like a workshop or a briefing section where they come for us, and there's 2 hours in the session for us to really look at the plans.
And Chair, I do agree with Councillor Thomas that we go in from 6 weeks to 8 weeks. It's inevitable that if we have, for example, more than 2 items on the agenda, the meeting is going to take longer. If we're going to do these reports justice, we'll have to be there longer.
100%.
And I don't disagree at all with Councillor Thomas that we have Cyfarthfa Foundation in, whichever way we do it, as soon as possible. But we've got to do it in conjunction with them and find out the times and dates, etc., when they can all come in.
Yeah, my laptop's froze, and it was the performance they've asked us to bring in.
Oh yes,
every meeting, and the risk as well. So we're already got reports in there that they want us to scrutinise. That's without us adding in what we want.
Yeah, and this, Chair, is going to affect not just our scrutiny committee, but everyone. And that's a pretty comprehensive report. So, Chair, we'll be going to have discussions with the various officers about that.
Yeah,
because it's usually a chunky report which takes up quite a percentage of time, and usually you've got several officers there or available.
Like June's meeting at the moment, finance performance risk report, empty property report. September finance performance risk planning APR, and then December finance performance risk report, and then February is one meeting draft budget, and finance, and then March again is finance performance risk report. That's without us adding anything on. The only date is the January one where there's nothing they've asked us to put on. So you can see, like, we're already, and the draft budget in February, that's the only thing they want on there. So it's I don't know what to say. This has to go to council, don't it, to approve.
Yeah, so, but I think Chair, we need to ascertain for the officers. They want particularly the finance report to be there, but we've got several other, well, you can see whole list in this particular scrutiny. It's how we're going to tie it up. I mean, are they going to do a summary of the performance report, or are we going to go into full detail of it every?
Yeah, I'd like to think it's just a little bit that's relevant to that last quarter.
I think we need to completely clarify that with the officers. Yeah.
Okay. Bill, do you want to come in before getting back in?
Thank you, Chair. I was listening to the debate and we listened again and saying we should have a meeting go later. Wait, because it's 5:30 now. We had 2 on the agenda, right? I bet you half an hour the dinner. Right? That's another issue. Can we start early, like 3 o'clock?
I haven't got a problem with that, but we'll circulate. We can circulate that.
See, it's all right, them saying 6 weeks to 8 weeks, right? But that's great on paper, but it don't work to it.
Yeah.
We're all
I might struggle with that if I'm on the school run.
Yes.
Say no more then. Paul, say no.
Same with me, Bill.
The thing is, right, we're at +5 now, and these are quite small reports compared to some of the ones we discuss. And then you check another one on there. You are talking 7 up at 7 o'clock. 7:30. Yeah. So I haven't got the answers right now. So
no. I mean, it's not possible to have it in the day in between sort of work time. Or then again, a lot of people work until a certain time anyway, don't they?
I think we could ask a question. It wouldn't be. I'd be fine with it. But
sorry, Chair, just to jump in there, it can be held earlier the meetings. I'll clarify the exact process, but I know part of the process is agreeing at the meeting before. So, if, for example, if the next meeting we wanted to hold at 2 o'clock, we would have to agree it in today's meeting, for example.
That's fine.
But again, the exact process. Okay. I can clarify the exact process.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Thomas?
Yeah, that was one of the points I was going to raise then, because when we go to the AGM now and we set out the dates for the meeting, if we wanted to propose to have a meeting at 10 o'clock in the morning, as long as we got plenty of notice, we can sort ourselves our lives out by then, right? But I know it's a challenge for a lot of us around the school pickup time around 3 o'clock. That's difficult for lots of us. But I think going forward, if it can be clarified AGM, that's the start time of the thriving scrutiny. Bang, on the nail, right? But I'll go back now to the finance report. I don't see why that finance report comes to the thriving scrutiny. It should go to the sustainable perhaps and the governance and audit, but there's no need for it to come here because we'll be discussing it here. People discussing in cabinet, discussing in full council. You just get bogged down with numbers.
Well, that's what they wanted, wasn't it?
I can't disagree with it.
That's what they asked for.
Yeah, that's what they've asked for. We can ask for some clarity on that.
Yeah, can we go back and because that's wasting. Like some people will be seeing that report 4 or 5 times. Bonkers.
And it might be that it's the only thing that's relevant to that scrutiny. But Clive's will be all of them. So yeah. Okay, item agenda 9, feedback from scrutiny activities. We recently held a workshop to discuss the traffic planning in the town centre. That's gonna come back. Just reading the notes. We haven't had it. And then I circulated it about going to see the hydro and the community energy over in Cambrian. Couldn't clarify or agree on a date, so I'm going away next week on the holidays. When I come back, we'll do it when the weather breaks a little bit better, and we'll go up. I've also spoken to Welsh Water about going to visit theirs as well. So and maybe potentially looking to develop some with them. So I think I met with Matthew Reading on the weekend as well. There's a community energy group, so I'll liaise with him and maybe we can meet up separate to scrutiny and discuss that as well. So, okay.
So, sorry, Chair. It might be my notes. I might have with Mr. Scrutiny for us.
Scrutiny. Right. I think I flipped it. I think I might have made a. Sorry, yes, item agenda 8, scrutiny referrals. There aren't any anyway, but yeah, I missed that one, so do apologise. Item agenda 10, any other business deemed urgent for the chair? I have none. I'd like to bring a meeting to a close and thank you all for your attendance.